Today, we're going to take a look at Devin Larratt versus Evgeny Prudnik at East versus West. Now, I think that this is relevant because now that Devin has been banished back down to the lightweight classes, I think we're going to see this match again at some points. Firstly, Devin's going to be going up against David Dadyikan, but I think he probably will win that match, and then at some point, Devin versus Prudnik 2.0 is bound to happen. Now, rounds 1 and 2 are pretty self-explanatory. Devin is just a little bit too much. First, we see him roll it into a king's move and prevent Prudnik's ability to set the hook initially. And after this, we see that even in a hook, Devin has the ability to commit his shoulder enough to prevent Prudnik's ability to hook effectively. But in round 3, something very, very interesting happens. It looks entirely different from any of the other rounds. And I think you could make a case that potentially Devin was in a bit of trouble here, because Evgeny Prudnik started to figure something out. I think he started to figure out potentially somewhat of a secret technique to use against Devin Larratt that is very effective. So let's see what happens upon the go. So initially, it may just look like Devin has taken everything. Upon that ready go, it may look like, okay, Prudnik was trying to hook him, and he failed. He was trying to bend his wrist and he failed. And now Devin is taking his cup. He's securing his pronation. He's getting everything that he wants to get. However, this starts to look a little bit less likely as the match goes on. Even here, it still looks like Devin is in a great position. It looks like he's almost in somewhat of a Cobra Road style exploding hand technique. He has his cup, he has his shoulder commitment, his pronation all at the same time. This is a perfect position. And this means that Devin should be able to just easily throw Prudnik into the floor from here. He can pile driver him, he can pin him so easily from this position. At least you would think that this would be the case. And as the match continues, it just looks even better and better for Devin. Until this moment right here. And we can see that as Devin attempts to pin, all of a sudden, his position does not look that great. We see his wrist. Firstly, we see him struggling to apply pressure from this position. And secondly, we see his wrist begin to go. He had his wrist cupped right here, and it starts to get flattened out. Now, sure, Prudnik is fouling, but I still think that there's something there. Now, maybe Devin just kind of messed up here, so let's look at the restart, because this is called as a foul. And upon the restart, we see pretty much the same thing. We see Devin, he's hitting outside, and it looks like he is in a really good position. You would think that Devin could simply pin with ease at this point. He has pronation, he has cup, he has height, he has more shoulder commitment than Prudnik. And it's difficult to understand why he isn't just pinning him easily. Now, one explanation of this is that Devin is simply showboating, and here we finally get the pin there. One explanation of this is that Devin is just trying to extend his victory. He's showboating, he's trying to be entertaining in classic Devin Larratt style. But another explanation of this, and you'll hear the commentators kind of going back and forth on this, as they're discussing it, there is a little bit of disagreement there. One of them thinks that Devin is simply extending his victory and could pin at any moment. The other thinks that perhaps Prudnik has found something here and is making it really difficult on Devin. So, if Devin has achieved that kind of Cobra Road style exploding hand technique, then you would expect that he could pin at any moment, but as we see, he really struggles throughout this match to pin, and finally when he does get this pin, we see an expression on his face of relief. It doesn't look like that was the easiest thing he's ever done. That looks like he was nervous, like he had been potentially exposed to a certain degree and wasn't totally sure of victory anymore. So let's go back and watch this now from a slightly different perspective. And that is the perspective that, what if Prudnik is actually the one forcing this position? What if Prudnik is kicking his wrist back intentionally, and he is intentionally going underneath Devin's arm in order to block Devin's supination. So in other words, Devin may actually be initiating this match trying to force Prudnik into a hook. And I think that this is possible. It's difficult to tell exactly what's going on in an arm wrestling match just from watching it. But from this angle, I think it looks as though Devin is trying to commit his shoulder, and he may be attempting to supinate and to bend his wrist, and is unable to do so, as Prudnik hits to the side, drags underneath, and actually forces his wrist right here underneath Devin's arm. And by forcing his wrist underneath Devin's arm, he is blocking Devin's supination. Devin cannot make the match arm on arm anymore. He cannot get inside. And I'm not saying this is definitely what's happening, but I think it's possible. And while Prudnik is intentionally going into this flop wrist move and getting underneath Devin, he's also still rising through his thumb. And that's what we see, is that Devin he doesn't have access to his inside game, but as he attempts to pin, Prudnik actually has access to somewhat of a king's move through his thumb right here, and that's why he starts to crack back the wrist of Devin. And so what's going on here, the reason that Devin has such poor access, and we'll see it more so in the second restarts, the reason that he has such poor access to his side pressure and his shoulder commitment is Prudnik is forcing Devin into a position of overpronation. So Devin would actually rather be in a supinated hook position, like a shoulder press position here, just like he was in the first round that led to such a dominant victory. But we see that the more Prudnik pronates, the more he goes outside, he pronates, and he kicks his wrist back more. The more that you will notice as the round goes on, we see Devin's knuckles may be facing Prudnik. By the end of the round, his palm is nearly facing Prudnik. So both pullers are getting totally overpronated, and they're not in a good position. You can see it right there. Devin is getting more and more overpronated. More and more overpronated. And then eventually we see a pin attempt here, I believe. There was a failed pin attempt from Devin. Getting more and more overpronated, and eventually, when he finally presses for the win, his palm is literally facing Evgeny Prudnik at this point. He is completely, I feel like this position must have been quite painful. This is not an ideal position to use any kind of shoulder pressure from. Devin is still able to do it. But I think that rather than Devin just extending his victory and just simply having fun with the match or trying to be entertaining, I think that Evgeny forced him into this overpronated, over outside position. You don't ever really want to be too far inside or too far outside in an arm wrestling match, because it leads to these awkward positions where you lose access to your shoulder commitment and your back pressure. And I think that's what's happening here. And Devin's wrist isn't even really flat here. So I think Devin did not go here intentionally. I think he was forced here by Prudnik. But let me know what you guys think about this, because there are a lot of different possible interpretations of this last round. And I could see any of them being correct. Maybe Devin was just trying to make the match look closer, but I tend to think that Prudnik forced him there. I think that Prudnik figured something out in that last round, and he may be putting this into practice. The next time that Devin and Prudnik pull each other, I won't be surprised if we see Prudnik opening the match in this kind of more awkward outside sort of flop wrist lane, because I think that this was the match where he was actually the closest to having something. So let me know what you guys think about this, but I will be very excited to see these guys pull again, hopefully within the next year or so.